Pulses, pulses, pulses. It seems right now that there's a heated discussion about pulses in the meta, especially in PvP. While we recently did have Bygones be very strong in the meta, it did get nerfed with high ground, so luckily there is that. But there's still a lot of negative talk about pulses, a lot of laning back with them, so it's led to a lot of team shotting. So I can understand the hate there, but they're still pretty good. Luckily, the pulse we're talking about today is more of a PvE powerhouse, but it does have some utility in PvP if you want to use it, but it's more for PvE, especially with a perk it can roll that makes it very good for dealing with a certain champion type, even if it has a different champion mod stacked on it. Hi there YouTube, it's me Chili. In today's video, we're going to be talking about Vantage Point. It was introduced this episode with Onslaught Salvation and Contest of Elders. Of course, you can farm right out by making the tonic specifically for it, from getting materials from doing Onslaught Salvation or Contest of Elders. We're going to be going over the origin tree first, the perks in the left and right column, my recommendations for PvE, and some roles for PvP if you wanted to use it there. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and let's get into the review, okay? Going over the origin trait first, it's called Dark Ether Reaper. Final blows with this weapon periodically spawn Dark Ether charges. Charges can be detonated early with weapon fire or by coming into contact with them. Doing so refills this weapon from reserves. Now, in the API, it states you get 25% profit for every miner or player kill in PvE or PvP. So that means every 4 kills you get will spawn an ether charge. You'll notice it spawned up if you see a little blue orb spawning up from the enemy's location when they are defeated. If you are to shoot the charge or come running into it, it reloads your max size and actually overflows it by 140% the capacity of your original max size. So if you see here on this vantage point that I'm using, I went from my 45 max size up to a 66 max size from shooting the orb. It makes it very good for auto-reloading the weapon for yourself and overflowing the max size so you have more bullets to use in your engagements in PvE and in some cases PvP too if you're able to get it. So it's a very good origin trade. The overflow is really nice, especially since most of these weapons from Onslaught Salvation have very slow reload. It's very beneficial and it counteracts that slow reload because of the origin trade. Going over the perks first, in the third column we have Closing Time, Keep Away, Stats for All, Deconstruct, To the Pain, Lone Wolf, and Eddy Current. In the fourth column we have Jolting Feedback, One for All, High Impact Reserves, Desperado, Focus Fury, Swashbuckler, and Headseeker. Moving into the PvE section first, in the third column, some good perks to think about. One is Stats for All. For simply shooting 3 different enemies, you get a stacking buff to reload, stability and range, an increase to your fall-off damage distance, and a reload multiplier scaler similar to like Outlaw. Especially due to this weapon have a slower reload than normal, that reload bump is very nice, especially with that multiplier, so it helps counteract that and makes it very good. However, there's different perks in here that I find just a little bit better. Another perk for PvE would actually be Deconstruct. Deconstruct is actually a weird case on a pulse rifle, but it's actually very good on a primary. If you see here, I'm shooting this boss with Deconstruct. Every 6 bursts, it procs Deconstruct, and it loads 2 bursts back every time. Every 6 bursts, I get 2 bursts back so I can keep firing on the boss or enemy that I'm shooting, and just keep firing and firing without having to worry about reloading. But of course, if I do happen to get the kill and the ether charge to spawn up, I can shoot it to reload it and overfill the mag, and I can keep laying into a target over and over again. That makes it very good for DPSing on a primary for this weapon, especially with some perks from the fourth column that make it very good for this trade combo. So Deconstruct is actually very good, but some people might not like it. Of course, the reload is very bad, so if you want something to counteract it, there's other options as well, but Deconstruct is actually pretty good. The other perk combo is actually Eddy Current. So Eddy Current gives you a temporary increase to reload speed and handling after sprinting or while amplified. The effect is improved when you are amplified. Since Vantage Point is arc, you're able to get amplified off of this pulse rifle whether on arc or prismatic. So at base, you get a plus 20 to reload, a 0.95 times reload duration multiplier, a bonus to your handling, and a handling animation duration multiplier as well. However, when you're amplified, it removes the sprint requirement so you have the Eddy Current proc at all times when you're amplified and increases the reload stat bonus to 60. Since Vantage Point has a 42 base reload speed, Eddy Current proc while amplified gets you to max reload, and you also have that reload duration multiplier on top of that, so you essentially have Outlaw for 15 seconds for the duration of your amplification. That makes it very good for reloading and running gun tactics. However, it's only good if you can get amplified. So prismatic classes and arc classes can take the full benefit out of this combo with this perk. However, if you're not using arc or prismatic, I would recommend staying away from this perk if you want to get reloading benefits for it. To the fourth column. In the fourth column, we have One for All, which is actually very good with playing with Stats for All, benefiting the combo that you're doing with shooting multiple enemies. Always very good. You get the 35% increase to your dash for 10 seconds on top of the buffs you're getting from Stats for All. You can use that combination together, so very good. Next, we have Focus Fury. Focus Fury is kind of okay, but because it resets after reloading, most people don't tend to use it that much unless paired with Overflow Mag perks or perks to auto-reload the gun automatically. Since this weapon has Deconstruct in the left column, you can actually pair it with Focus Fury. If you fire 6 bursts into the target's head, you'll auto-reload with Deconstruct 2 bursts back, and that way you're able to take advantage of Focus Fury even more. You can keep laying into the target, increasing your DPS, and keep the chain going for just a little bit longer so that way you get more damage out. So with that combo, you could go with that as well, but if you want to use this one, you can use it. Then we have Swashbuckler to get a stacking damage increase up to ×5 for a 33% increase to damage. Very good for stacker with melee builds if you want to do that, but I think One for All might be just a little bit better, but if you're using a lot of melee builds, you can use this one. But the perk I see the most beneficial is actually the new one, Jolting Feedback. Dealing repeated damage with this weapon inflicts Jolt, while Amplified Jolt is applied faster. For pulses, you have to land 14 bullets to inflict jolt onto a target. It's the yin to Volt Shot's yang. For Volt Shot, you have to get a kill and reload so you can apply jolt to a target. With Jolting Feedback, you just have to put out consistent damage to a target. On a pulse, it's actually very easy to do, so you can always proc jolt whenever you want to. Especially on beefier targets, if you lay into them first, you'll get the jolt proc on them, and then any assets spawn near them will also get hit by the jolt lightning effect and be cleared out on top of it. So that way it makes it very good for ag clearing on top of it. Now there's an interesting part of the perk that's not stated in the API. Now it does state while amplified, it requires less bullets. For a pulse, it goes down to 10. However, Jolting Feedback has an internal cooldown of 2 to 3 seconds before it can be reprocced again. However, when amplified, that cooldown is not there anymore. So that way you can keep proccing Jolt over and over and over again so long as you're amplified. Again, you can take advantage of that with Prismatic and Arc subclasses. And due to this perk inflicting Jolt, it has the added benefit of dealing with Overload champions. And actually, it's separate from champion mods that would be on this pulse rifle. If you see here dealing this barrier champion, I don't have any champion mod here. I proc radiant, I keep damaging him, I get my radiant buff, and I still proc the jolt on the target, which would stun an overload champion. If you see in this clip here while I'm dealing damage to an overload champion, if you see I have unstoppable pulse, but because the jolt is separate from the pulse rifle, it actually inflicts the jolt and still stuns the overload champion even though I have unstopped pulse. That way I can deal with both unstoppables and overloads together on this one pulse rifle. I can deal with 2 champion types just from one weapon, which is actually very, very good, especially in champion content. It makes it very worthwhile to have. So while in PvE, there's a lot of good damage perks for it, I feel like Jolting Feedback is the best in the 4th column. Now, if we're using Jolting Feedback, that actually opens up a lot of perk options for PvE in the 3rd column. So with Jolting Feedback, the Chain Lightning, it would actually prot Stats for All in the 3rd column, so you get that benefit to the reload buff, so it's actually very good. I would recommend that combo if you were not using Prismatic or an Arc subclass, but if you are using those two, 80 Current would be the play for that, so you get the increased reload, the animation duration scaler for your handling, and your reload multiplier as well. If you want to do something for a little bit more DPS with this weapon on top of the Jolt, you can do Deconstruct as well. So that way, when you're dealing consistent damage, which is also helping Jolting Feedback, every 6 bursts, you'll get 2 bursts back. That lets you lay into the target a lot more for a lot of consistent damage and keeping the champion stunned. And that way, you can keep that DPS going for this primary. Roles I would recommend for PvE would be Stats for All and Jolting Feedback if you're not using Prismatic or Arc. Deconstruct and Jolting Feedback if you want to have consistent damage on an overload champion to keep them stunned, or just on a bigger, beefier target. Or if you're using Prismatic or Arc, Eddy Current and Jolting Feedback, helping that gameplay loop of being amplified, increasing your reload to help proc the Jolting Feedback with Amplify, and of course getting the reload buffs to that and handling bumps on top of it too. Now for PvP, it's not looking good. Going over the stats in PvP compared to other adaptive pulse rifles in the energy slot, Vantage Point is pretty under par. It's tied for the third worst range, second worst stability, second worst handling, and second worst reload speed of all the adaptive pulse rifles in the energy slot. So it's not looking good for it. However, it does have some perks for PvP that can give it good stat bumps for it. But compared to other weapons like Bygone, Smite, or Miranda actually come with very high stats, including Jordan's Claw as well for Iron Banner that can get perks that increase its stats even far outside of its band that it could achieve. It's not looking too good, but there is some options. Going over the perks in the third column for PvP, there's actually two different perks that I see would be most beneficial to help its lackluster stats. Before I get into those two, I just want to mention really quickly that closing time is on this weapon. While this perk is actually very good on special weapons, on a primary, it's not as good. Those buffs are very nice, but on specials, it's better because you always start with one bullet. Now, for this pulse rifle, due to it being a primary, you have to prime it down to half of the mag size to start getting the benefit. So it's not really worth it. I just want to mention that really quickly for those that might mention it. I don't see it as beneficial to use it, but you can use it if you'd like. But these two perks here I'm going to mention are the ones I recommend will probably be the best to make up for its stat package. So first one is Keep Away for the increase to reload, range, and accuracy when no targets are in close proximity. Due to the nature of pulses and how they play, you're always at a distance, so you'll always have constant keep away uptime. Of course, if someone is shotgun rushing you, you will lose it in that duration, but you can use that as a tell if someone's rushing you. Because, of course, if they step within your 15-meter range, you'll lose keep away. That's a telltale sign to know if they're actually pushing you. So that way you know to swap to your shotgun and be ready just in case. With Keep Away, you get a plus 10 to reload, plus 30 to handling, and a decrease of accuracy cone growth by 5%. This actually helps out its range a lot. Due to it not having very high range in comparison to other adapted pulse rifles, it's very beneficial to have that for consistency at deeper ranges because the damage fall-off is very, very noticeable. Now, the other perk combo is Lone Wolf. Lone Wolf increases your aim assistance and airborne effectiveness by 10 and increases your ADS duration multiplier by 0.9%. When not nearby any allies, it's doubled to 20 for the aim assistance and airborne effectiveness, and the ADS duration multiplier is decreased to 0.8. That makes it very snappy and very consistent. With Lone Wolf at max stacks, you're sitting at 77 aim assist, the highest aim assist of any adaptive pulse rifle in the game. It makes it very good for having stickiness to the head. However, because of the stat package of its range, I think Keep Away is just a little bit better, but Lone Wolf is still pretty good too. This one falls down to more preference, whichever one you find more beneficial. I tried Lone Wolf and Keep Away. I liked Keep Away just a little bit more, but Lone Wolf was still pretty good too. In the fourth column, there's two perks that I see being very good for PvP. Now, before we get into those perks, let's quickly talk about the TTK. For adaptive pulse rifles, their TTK is 0.93 for 6 headshots in one body, so you always need to land 3 bursts to get a kill. Now, if you remember for Bygones with high ground, that damage pop was just enough to let you get a 2-burst kill at a 0.6 TTK. So adaptives, you need a damage perk to help out with it so that way it can stay competitive in the meta. Especially with all the options we have running around right now, we're gonna need a damage perk to help it out. So the one damage perk that will be most beneficial is Swashbuckler. Simply for having Swashbuckler at ×1, your TTK goes down to 0.6 seconds, similar to Bygones with high ground. So simply for getting a kill, you're able to achieve that 0.6 second TTK on the next person you start an engagement with, or if you happen to get a minute kill, you get to max stacks, and your TTK shifts to 0.53 seconds, allowing for a 5 headshot kill. So that makes it very good to stay competitive in the meta, especially with high impact pulses being a 0.67 TTK. Having Swashbuckler I see as being the best perk to use in PvP. However, if you want something more consistency related, you can use Headseeker. Since the nature of pulses, sometimes they're very sporadic, you might not get all headshots, you can get flints off the head. If you happen to land a body shot first, you get that increased multiplier to the head to stay consistent in your TTK at that 0.93 at the longer ranges. So it's still very good for consistency. But for me, PvP, I think Swashbuckler is the play. I used it with an Arcris Embrace build. If you see in the background gameplay, if you see my Ricochet knives, my damage after getting the Swashbuckler times 5 goes up to 54 damage per bullet. So that way, tier 10 resilient, I can kill them in 5 headshots. So if you want something for more lethality and to compete in the meta, I would say Swashbuckler, so that way you can keep up that 0.6 TDK. However, you want more consistency, I would recommend Headseeker. For the Mac perk, I recommend Accurized rounds to help push out the range. Some people might go with steady rounds, but I don't like the nerf to range, especially when the range is already very low. So I would go with Accurized round. Now the barrel. This is where things can get pretty unique. Recoil direction's at 54, so it's pretty in the middle band of recoil direction. Your recoil direction's on a curve, so whenever your recoil is closer to a 0, it tends to veer off to the left or the right. The closer it is to 5, the more vertical it is. Since it's 54, we're able to put any barrel perk and still stay somewhat relatively in the middle. So for barrel perk, I would actually recommend small bore for the nice bump to the range and stability just to make up for its lackluster stats just a little bit. For the masterwork, I actually recommend range, so we can push up the range just a little bit more, but you can also go stability as well just to help out with consistency. For the mod, I recommend ballistics to help out the range and stability as well, helping stacking up that stat bar all the way up as much as possible so that way it can compete with other pulses in its range band, so that way it makes it very good. So my guide roll for PvP would be small bore, accurized rounds, keep away, swashbuckler with a stability or range masterworks, and ballistics. Now again, this pulse is not very strong in PvP. It has to be built in a lot. You need a perfect 5 out of 5 to use it. But if you do, I definitely recommend trying it. It was a lot of fun. Now, for certain matches with high impact pulses, I was getting beat out a lot. But when I did get swashbuckler, I was always being at high impact pulses. So it's a case by case basis, but definitely recommend trying this one. And that's going to do it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. What are you going to build this pulse rifle for? Let me know down in the comments. Are you going to be building it for PvE for the jolting feedback roll? Or are you going to be going for some damage perks? And what about PvP? Are you going to go for consistency perks? Or are you going to be going for damage perks so that we can compete in the meta for TTK values? Be sure to let me know. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. And remember, stay chilly. Bye-bye.